The grand medical chamber of the Vesperian palace buzzed with nervous energy as another doctor hurried away, head bowed in shame. Queen Rose sat on her medical pod, her iridescent wings twitching with barely contained fury. This was the 200th failed conception attempt, and her patience was wearing thinner than the delicate silk draping her tall, elegant form. "Your Majesty," Dr. Reed approached carefully, his antennae lowered in submission. "Perhaps we should consider alternative options." The Queen's violet eyes narrowed. In the 10,000 years of Vesperian history, no queen had ever needed more than 50 attempts to produce an heir. Yet here she was, after 200 carefully selected males, still without child. The kingdom whispered behind their hands, and she knew it. "What do you mean by alternative options, Doctor?" Her voice carried the weight of authority, even as her inner chambers remained private enough for honest discussion. The doctor pulled up a holographic display, his six-fingered hands moving swiftly across the controls. "We've been monitoring various species across the galaxy, studying their reproductive patterns." He paused, clearly nervous about his next words. "There's one species that shows remarkable efficiency." Queen Rose leaned forward, her wings catching the light of the medical bay's soft illumination. "Go on." "Humans, Your Majesty." The doctor brought up an image of the species in question. "Their reproduction rate is, well, it's quite extraordinary. They can conceive within their first attempt nearly 25% of the time." The Queen stared at the image. The creatures looked so simple, only 2 arms, no wings, dull-colored skin, and not an antenna in sight. "These humans, they're from that backwater planet Earth, aren't they?" "Yes, Your Majesty. While they may seem primitive in some ways, their genetic structure is remarkably compatible with ours. Our scientists discovered this during routine xenobiological studies." From the corner of the room, General Apex, the Queen's most trusted advisor, stepped forward. Her battle-scarred wings and stern expression added weight to her words. "My Queen, considering such an option would be unprecedented. The royal bloodline has remained pure for millennia." Queen Rose stood, her full height making everyone else in the room look small. She walked to the window overlooking her vast capital city. The crystal spires reached toward the twin moons, and millions of her people went about their lives, all of them waiting for the announcement of a royal heir. "Tell me, Doctor," she said without turning, "what are the chances of success with another Vesperian male?" The doctor's antennae drooped even lower, based on current data. "Less than 0.1% per attempt, Your Majesty." The Queen's reflection in the window showed her clenched jaw. 200 failed attempts, 200 ceremonies, 200 disappointments, 200 whispers in the court about her fitness to rule. Something had to change. And with a human. The compatibility tests suggest a success rate of up to 30% on the first attempt, Your Majesty. The room fell silent. Even the constant hum of the medical equipment seemed to fade away as everyone waited for the Queen's response. Finally, Queen Rose turned around, her face set with determination. "Contact Earth's leaders. Tell them we wish to establish a diplomatic exchange program." General Apex stepped forward again. "My Queen, the conservatives in the court will." "The conservatives in the court are not the ones who must ensure the survival of our lineage." Queen Rose cut her off. "I am." Dr. Reed bowed deeply. "I'll prepare the necessary documents right away, Your Majesty." As her staff hurried to carry out her orders, Queen Rose returned to the window. Somewhere on that primitive planet Earth was the solution to her problem. She didn't like it. In fact, the thought of mating with a human made her antennae curl. But she was queen. Sometimes being queen meant making difficult choices. "And Doctor," she called out just as he reached the door, "make sure they send their best specimen. If I must do this, I will not settle for anything less than perfect." Little did Queen Rose know that her definition of perfect would soon be challenged in ways she never expected. Tom Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished his morning work on his family's Montana farm. At 28 years old, he had never imagined his life would extend beyond these peaceful fields of wheat. The morning sun was bright, the air was crisp, and everything seemed perfectly normal. Until 3 black government SUVs came rolling up his dusty driveway. "Mr. Miller." A woman in a sharp business suit stepped out, holding a tablet. "I'm Agent Adams from the State Department. We need to talk." 2 hours later, Tom sat in his kitchen, staring blankly at the documents in front of him. His mother had made coffee for everyone, her hands shaking slightly as she poured. "Let me get this straight," Tom said slowly. "I was picked out of everyone on Earth because my genetic profile is special." Agent Adams nodded. "Your DNA was flagged in our database from that medical study you participated in last year. You show remarkable genetic stability and adaptability. The Vesperians specifically requested such traits." Tom's father leaned forward, his weathered face concerned. "And you're saying these alien people want him for diplomatic reasons?" The agents exchanged careful looks. "The exact nature of the diplomatic mission is classified," Agent Adams said smoothly. "But we can assure you it's a great honor. The Vesperians are one of the most advanced civilizations we've encountered." Meanwhile, aboard the Vesperian royal ship approaching Earth, Queen Rose was reviewing Tom's file with increasing disgust. "This is their prime specimen." She flicked through the holographic images showing Tom working on his farm. "He's a primitive agricultural laborer." Dr. Reed cleared his throat nervously. "Your Majesty, while his occupation might seem humble, his genetic profile is exceptional. Look at these markers." He pulled up a complex DNA analysis. "Perfect hormone balance, excellent physical health, and remarkable genetic stability. Even among humans, he's exceptional." The Queen's antennae twitched irritably. "He spends his days growing plants in dirt, which shows his connection to nature and understanding of life cycles," General Apex offered diplomatically. "And his physical labor has kept him in peak condition." Back on Earth, Tom was packing his bags with trembling hands. The agents had given him just 1 day to prepare. His mother stood in his doorway, trying not to cry. "I don't understand why it has to be you," she said softly. Tom zipped up his duffel bag. "They said I'm helping maintain peace between Earth and their empire. That's worth doing, right?" He tried to sound more confident than he felt. The next morning, a sleek spacecraft landed in the field behind the Miller farm, flattening a section of wheat. Tom stood with his parents, watching as a ramp descended and 2 tall, elegant aliens emerged. Their wings shimmered in the morning light, and their antennae moved gracefully as they approached. "Mr. Miller," one of them said in perfect English, "I am Protocol Officer Lane. We are here to escort you to the Vesperian capital." Tom hugged his parents goodbye, promising to make them proud. As he walked toward the spacecraft, he heard his mother whisper, "He doesn't even know what they really want him for." The journey to the Vesperian capital took 3 days. Tom spent most of it studying their language and customs, trying to absorb as much as possible. No one would tell him exactly what his diplomatic duties would entail, but he noticed the crew giving him strange looks. Finally, they arrived. The capital planet of the Vesperian Empire spread out below them, a world of crystal cities and floating gardens. Tom pressed his face against the viewport, awestruck by the alien beauty. Protocol Officer Lane appeared beside him. "We will be landing at the royal palace shortly. The Queen awaits." "The Queen?" Tom turned, surprised. No one said anything about meeting the Queen. Lane's antennae twitched in what might have been amusement. "Oh yes, Mr. Miller. You'll be spending quite a lot of time with Her Majesty. More than you might expect." As the ship descended toward the crystal spires of the royal palace, Tom had no idea he was about to become the most important human in the galaxy, for reasons he couldn't possibly imagine. Tom's first steps into the Vesperian royal palace were a disaster. He accidentally bowed when he should have knelt, walked when he should have waited, and spoke when he should have remained silent. Protocol Officer Lane's antennae were twitching so violently they looked like they might fall off. Mr. Miller, Lane hissed after Tom's fifth mistake in as many minutes. You must wait for the Queen's antennae to dip before speaking. But I don't have antennae, Tom whispered back, causing several nearby court members to gasp at his speaking not of turn again. The grand reception hall was packed with Vesperian nobles, their wings creating a shimmering rainbow effect as they moved. Tom felt like a brown sparrow in a room full of peacocks. His simple earth clothes, though the finest he owned, looked dull compared to their glittering robes. Suddenly, everyone fell silent. The massive crystal doors at the far end of the hall swung open. Queen Rose entered, and Tom forgot how to breathe. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with wings that seemed to capture and release light with every movement. Her violet eyes swept the room, and her antennae moved with graceful purpose. She was both beautiful and terrifying. Then she saw Tom, and her face did something complicated. "This is the human?" she asked, her voice carrying across the hall. "He's so plain." Tom, not understanding the Vesperian language yet, smiled politely. This apparently was another mistake, as several nobles covered their faces with their wings in shock. "Your Majesty," Tom said in carefully practiced Vesperian, mangling the pronunciation terribly, "I bring greetings from Earth." The Queen's antennae went completely still, apparently a sign of extreme surprise. "You speak our language?" she asked in English. "I learned some on the journey here," Tom replied, then added with his typical farm boy honesty, "though I'm probably butchering it something awful." A strange sound echoed through the hall. It took everyone a moment to realize the Queen was laughing. Not the delicate, musical laugh of Vesperian nobility, but a genuine, surprised laugh. "At least you admit your shortcomings," she said, regaining her composure. "Unlike the hundreds of preening nobles who claim perfection while failing spectacularly." The gathered crowd shifted uncomfortably. Tom, missing the political undertones completely, just smiled again. "Where I come from, ma'am. I mean, Your Majesty. We believe honesty's the best policy." Though he looked around at the scandalized faces, "I'm starting to think maybe that doesn't translate well here." Queen Rose descended from her platform, approaching Tom. The crowd parted like water. Up close, he could see that her eyes had tiny flecks of gold in them. "Tell me, Tom Miller," she said, using his first name in a way that made several nobles nearly faint, "what do you think of our palace?" "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he said without hesitation. "Though I admit, I keep worrying I'm going to break something. Everything looks so delicate." "And what of our people?" "Also beautiful," he said, then added with his characteristic honesty, "though everyone seems really uptight. Begging your pardon, Your Majesty." More gasps from the crowd. General Apex stepped forward, ready to intervene, but the Queen held up a hand to stop her. "Uptight," she repeated, testing the unfamiliar word. "You know, stiff, formal, like everyone's afraid to be themselves." The Queen studied him for a long moment. Here was a human who had no idea of his true purpose here, who broke every rule of etiquette without malice, who spoke truth without fear. It was refreshing. "You will join me for dinner," she announced suddenly. "Alone." The court erupted in whispers. Dining alone with the Queen was unheard of. There were traditionally at least 12 attendants present at all times. "Sure thing," Tom said cheerfully, committing yet another faux pas by not waiting for her antennae to dip. "Though I might need help figuring out which fork to use. We usually just use one back home." As Queen Rose turned to leave, she found herself fighting back another unseemly laugh. Perhaps this strange, simple human would be more interesting than she had thought. Though she still couldn't believe this farm boy was supposed to be the solution to her empire's greatest problem. What she didn't realize was that his very simplicity would turn out to be his greatest strength. The private dining chamber of Queen Rose was a marvel of crystal and light, but Tom was too nervous to fully appreciate it. He had been dressed in traditional Vesperian robes by a team of flustered attendants who couldn't believe the informality with which he kept thanking them. "The Queen will arrive shortly," Protocol Officer Lane said, adjusting Tom's robes for the 10th time. "Remember, do not eat until her antennae dip forward." "I got it," Tom finished. He'd been practicing reading antenna signals for hours. The crystal doors slid open, and Queen Rose entered. She had changed into simpler robes, though they still put Tom's ceremonial outfit to shame. Her wings caught the light of the setting suns, creating patterns on the walls. "Leave us," she commanded. Lane and the other attendants practically ran out, though their faces showed clear concern about leaving their queen alone with this unpredictable human. "Nice and cozy in here," Tom said, then quickly looked at her antennae. To his relief, they had already dipped. "You're learning," the Queen observed, taking her seat, "though your posture is still atrocious." Tom grinned. "Can't help it. Spent too many years hauling hay bales." The Queen waved her hand, and food appeared through slots in the table. Tom's eyes widened at the strange, colorful dishes. "It's all compatible with human biology," she assured him. "We've researched thoroughly." "That's mighty thoughtful of you," Tom said, watching carefully as she began to eat. He copied her movements, though his attempt to use the Vesperian eating utensils looked more like a wrestling match. After a few minutes of awkward silence, the Queen spoke. "Tell me about your life on Earth." Tom's face lit up. "Well, my family's had our farm for 4 generations. We grow wheat mostly, but also some corn and soybeans. There's nothing quite like watching things grow, knowing you're helping feed people." The Queen listened, fascinated despite herself. Here was someone who took pride in working with the earth itself, who spoke with passion about nurturing life. It was so different from the calculated ambitions of her court. "And have you never wanted more?" she asked. "Power? Status?" Tom shrugged. "Got everything I need." "Well, almost everything." His face softened, still hoping to find someone to share it with someday. The Queen's antennae twitched. If only he knew. "Speaking of sharing," Tom continued, "nobody's told me why I'm really here. All this special treatment. There's got to be more to it than just diplomatic relations." For the first time in centuries, Queen Rose felt uncertain. How do you tell someone they've been selected for royal breeding? "You are here because you possess certain qualities we value," she said carefully. "Like what?" "Strength, health, genetic compatibility." Tom's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Genetic comp. Oh." His eyes widened as understanding dawned. Asterisko asterisk. The Queen waited for shock, disgust, or fear. Instead, Tom started laughing. "Well, that explains all the medical tests back on Earth," he said, "though I wish someone had just been honest about it." "You're not offended?" "Should I be? I mean, it's kind of flattering, in a weird way." He looked at her directly, something few dared to do. "But you should know where I come from. We usually get to know each other first." The Queen felt her face warm. "We don't have time for such courtship rituals. The Empire needs an heir." "Well," Tom said, setting down his utensils, "we've got this whole dinner to get to know each other. Why don't you tell me about yourself? Not the Queen stuff, the real you." And somehow, against all protocol and tradition, she did. They talked for hours. She told him about the pressure of ruling, the loneliness of power, the fear of failing her people. He listened without judgment, offering simple but surprisingly wise observations. When dinner ended, she found herself reluctant to see him go. "The ceremony will be tomorrow," she announced. "There are many rituals to prepare. Or," Tom said with that disarming honesty, "we could skip all that and just see if we fit together naturally." The Queen's antennae shot straight up in shock. But as she looked at his kind, open face, she made a decision that would scandalize her entire empire. She reached for his hand. 3 days after what the palace staff now whispered about as the night of broken protocol, Queen Rose sat in her medical chamber, wings twitching nervously as Dr. Reed ran the scanner over her abdomen for the 4th time. "This is impossible," he muttered, his antennae practically tied in knots. Simply impossible. What is impossible? The Queen demanded. Speak plainly, Doctor. The medical officer turned the holographic display so she could see it. A small cluster of cells pulsed with life, already showing signs of both human and Vesperian DNA perfectly merged. You're pregnant, Your Majesty. First try. The Queen's wings spread wide in shock, knocking over several medical instruments. What? The news spread through the palace faster than light speed. Within hours, the entire royal council had assembled in the emergency chamber. Tom, still clueless about the magnitude of what had happened, was busy in the palace gardens, teaching some fascinated young Vesperians about Earth-style plant cultivation. This is unprecedented, High Counselor Mint declared, her wings practically vibrating with agitation. 200 noble Vesperian males failed, yet this farmer succeeds immediately. General Apex stood at attention, trying to hide her own amazement. The medical scans confirm it. The embryo is healthy, showing strong signs of hybrid vigor. Queen Rose sat on her throne, one hand unconsciously resting on her abdomen. She should have been thrilled. This was what she wanted, what her empire needed. Instead, she felt a strange mix of anger and awe. "Bring me the human," she commanded. Tom was escorted in, still wearing the simple work clothes he'd insisted on keeping. He had dirt on his hands from the garden, and he was grinning until he saw all the serious faces. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked, looking around nervously. The Queen's voice could have frozen fire. "You impregnated me." Tom's face went through several expressions at once. What? Already? But it's only been 3 days." "Exactly." Queen Rose stood, her wings flaring impressively. "Do you have any idea what this means? Generations of careful Vesperian breeding protocols, centuries of genetic selection. And you just waltz in and succeed on the first try." Sorry," Tom offered, genuinely confused about whether this was good news or bad news. Dr. Reed stepped forward with another holographic display. "The hybrid embryo is showing remarkable stability. The human genetic material has somehow perfectly complemented Your Majesty's royal bloodline. It's as if..." "As if what?" the Queen demanded. "As if humans were the missing piece we've been looking for all along." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some members were calling for immediate genetic studies of other humans. Others were demanding the pregnancy be terminated to preserve royal purity. A few were already drafting new laws about human Vesperian relations. Through it all, Tom stood quietly, watching Queen Rose. Despite her outward anger, he noticed something else in her expression. Fear, maybe, or excitement. "Your Majesty," he said softly, ignoring all protocol and walking straight up to her throne. The council fell silent in shock at his boldness. "Are you happy about this?" The Queen stared at him. Such a simple question, yet no one had thought to ask it. I don't know," she admitted, her voice equally soft. "This changes everything." "Where I come from," Tom said, still ignoring the horrified looks from the council members, "we have a saying. Sometimes the best things in life are unexpected." Something in the Queen's expression shifted. She looked at this simple human farmer who had accomplished what hundreds of noble males could not, who spoke to her like a person rather than a queen, who had given her empire a future in the most unexpected way. "Leave us," she commanded the council. "All of you." As the council members filed out, still buzzing with shocked discussions, Queen Rose found herself face to face with the father of her future child, the human who had turned her world upside down without even trying. "We need to talk," she said, "about everything." Tom smiled that disarming smile of his. "Yes, Your Majesty, we sure do." And somewhere deep inside her, the tiny hybrid embryo continued to grow, living proof that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unlikely places. The great debate hall of the Vesperian palace had never seen such chaos. 1 week after the announcement of the Queen's pregnancy, the empire was divided. Hundreds of noble Vesperians filled the crystal chamber, their wings creating a storm of color as they argued. "The bloodline must remain pure," shouted Lord Thorne, his wings flashing angry red. 2,000 years of careful breeding, ruined by human DNA. "But look at the medical data," Dr. Reed countered, projecting massive holograms of the developing embryo. "The hybrid genes are showing strength we've never seen before." Tom sat in a special observation box, watching the chaos unfold. He'd traded his Earth clothes for proper Vesperian robes, though he still wore his worn work boots underneath. Some habits died hard. "I still don't understand all the fuss," he muttered to General Apex, who'd become something of an ally. "Where I come from, a baby is just a blessing." The general's antennae twitched sympathetically. "Where you come from, the baby doesn't determine the future of an entire empire." Below them, Queen Rose sat on her throne, listening to both sides. Her hand rested protectively over her abdomen, where her child, their child, grew stronger each day. "The ancient laws are clear," Lord Thorne continued. "Any royal pregnancy of questionable heritage must be terminated for the good of the empire." Tom stood up so fast he knocked over his chair. "Like hell it will." The entire hall fell silent. Even the Queen looked up in surprise. No one had ever heard Tom raise his voice before. "Mr. Miller," Lord Thorne sneered, "you have no standing here." "I may not know your fancy laws," Tom interrupted, his farmer's hands gripping the balcony rail, "but I know right from wrong. That's my child too, and where I come from, we protect our families." The Queen's antennae quivered. Something about seeing this usually gentle human standing fierce in defense of their unborn child stirred something in her. "Lord Thorne," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs, "are you suggesting that I, your queen, have made a mistake?" The noble's wings drooped. "No, your majesty, but are you suggesting that I would choose anything less than the best for my empire?" "Of course not. But then let me be clear." Queen Rose stood, her wings spreading to their full impressive span. "This child grows strong within me, stronger than any previous royal embryo. The medical data proves it. The ancient laws also say the Queen's word is final in all matters of succession. Or do you question that law as well?" The hall erupted in a fresh wave of gossip. Queen Rose raised her hand for silence. "Dr. Reed, share your latest findings." The doctor eagerly projected new images. "The hybrid embryo shows enhanced immune response, superior cellular regeneration, and unprecedented neural development. It appears the human genetic material isn't degrading our royal bloodline. It's strengthening it." "Evolution," Tom said suddenly, making everyone turn to him. "Back home, we learned that sometimes different breeds create stronger offspring. We see it in plants all the time. Hybrid vigor, we call it." Dr. Reed's antennae perked up. "Yes, exactly. The human genetic diversity is providing exactly what our over-selected bloodline needed." The mood in the hall began to shift. Several nobles who had been opposed now looked thoughtful. Even Lord Thorne seemed less certain. Queen Rose seized the moment. "I propose a vote. Who stands with their queen and the future of our empire?" One by one, wings began to rise in the traditional gesture of support. Not everyone. Lord Thorne and his closest allies remained opposed, but enough. "The motion carries," General Apex announced formally. "The pregnancy will continue, with the full support of the Royal Council." That evening, Tom found Queen Rose alone in her private garden. She was watching the twin moons rise, their light making her wings shimmer. "Thank you," she said without turning, "for defending our child." Tom moved to stand beside her. "I meant what I said. Where I come from, family comes first." She turned to look at him, seeing not the simple farmer she'd first met, but a man who'd fight for what he believed in. A man who'd help her change an empire. "Where you come from," she said softly, "seems to have quite a bit of wisdom." Together, they watched the moons rise over a kingdom on the brink of historic change. The royal birthing chamber glowed with soft purple light as Queen Rose's time approached. 6 months had passed. the standard gestation period for Vesperians, though no one knew if the hybrid child would follow those rules. Tom paced outside, his worn boots marking a path in the crystal floor. "Will you please sit down?" General Apex said, her antennae twitching with amusement. "You're making everyone nervous." "Can't help it," Tom replied, running a hand through his hair. "Where I come from, fathers are usually allowed in the birthing room." Inside, Queen Rose's wings suddenly flared with a bright pulse of light, the signal that the birth was imminent. Tom stopped pacing. Every Vesperian in the palace felt their antennae tingling with anticipation. Dr. Reed burst through the doors, his wings practically vibrating with excitement. "Mr. Miller, Your Majesty requests your presence." The conservatives had fought against this too, but Queen Rose had been adamant. If human genetics helped create this child, then human birthing customs would be honored too. Tom nearly tripped over his robes in his rush to enter. Queen Rose lay on the birthing pod, her wings creating a gentle glow. When she saw Tom, she reached for his hand. "I thought you'd want to meet your daughter," she said softly. There, cradled in a nest of soft light, was their child. She was perfect. Tiny wings already shimmering with a mix of Vesperian luminescence and an entirely new pattern of colors. Her skin had a subtle iridescence, and when she opened her eyes, they were her mother's violet with flecks of Tom's brown. Most surprisingly, two delicate antennae curved from her forehead, while a dusting of human-like hair crowned her head. "She's beautiful," Tom whispered, tears in his eyes. The baby's antennae reached toward him, already recognizing her father's presence. When Tom gently touched her hand, she grabbed his finger with surprising strength. Dr. Reed was practically dancing with joy as he checked the medical readings. Perfect health. Strong hybrid vigor in every cell. This is a medical miracle. Queen Rose watched Tom with their daughter, seeing the love already shining in his eyes. These past months had changed everything. Not just their empire, but her heart as well. "We need to name her," she said. In Vesperian culture, royal children were usually named after great rulers or celestial bodies. But this child was something new. "How about Hope?" Tom suggested. "Because that's what she is. Hope for the future, hope for change, hope for bringing people together." The Queen smiled. "Hope," she repeated, testing the Earth word. "Yes, though she'll need a Vesperian name too. Princess Hope Aurora," Tom said, combining Earth simplicity with Vesperian elegance. "If that's okay." The baby's wings flickered with light, as if approving her name. News of the successful birth spread across the empire. The palace released images of the hybrid princess, and to everyone's surprise, the public fell in love. Her unique beauty became a symbol of positive change, of evolution rather than dilution. 1 month later, the Royal Council convened again. This time, instead of arguing about bloodlines, they were drafting new laws about human Vesperian relations. Even Lord Thorne had to admit that Princess Hope's perfect health and unique traits were hard to argue against. "There's one more matter to address," Queen Rose announced from her throne. She looked at Tom, who stood nearby in his new position as royal consort. "The success of this union suggests we should consider more human Vesperian partnerships." The council erupted in excited discussion. Already, several noble families had expressed interest in human genetic compatibility. "We'll need someone to oversee these new relations," the Queen continued. "Someone who understands both cultures." Tom stepped forward, no longer the awkward farmer, but a man who had helped change an empire. "I might know some good folks back home who'd be interested, but we do it right, with honesty and respect on both sides." Queen Rose nodded, watching as their daughter slept peacefully in her floating crib, her wings occasionally flickering with dreams. "Yes," she agreed. "No more secrets. We build this future together." As the twin suns set outside, their light caught the princess's wings, creating a new pattern of colors never seen before in the empire. Like her parents, she represented the best of both worlds. proof that sometimes the greatest strength comes from embracing change rather than fearing it. And somewhere on Earth, a wheat farm in Montana stood ready to welcome some very unusual guests, as two civilizations began the careful dance of coming together, one genetic match at a time.